I could have used Adam Schiff's help 2 years ago getting documents from a different White House. So I applaud him for finally coming to the full realization that you need documents to be able to conduct an investigation. I fully expect this White House to provide all documents that are not otherwise legally protected. I have no reason to believe they will not. And I think those documents will be provided in time for us to conduct the most fulsome interviews necessary. I smile a little bit at the irony of Congressman Schiff complaining about a White House that won't produce documents. I swear I could have used his help over the last 6 years.
Joining us now, ranking member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff of California. Thanks very much for being on the show this morning.
It's great to be with you.
Wondering if you could, I guess, first comment on the Bannon news, his removal from the NSC.
Well, I think it's a very positive step. He certainly introduced a political element there that doesn't belong there. From my own point of view, he doesn't belong in the White House either, but this is, I hope, a first and very positive step. Certainly if it shows that General McMaster is getting the kind of authority that he was promised to make his own personnel decisions, to really consolidate influence over the NSC. I hope it'll result in a more sound national security policy, one that is less focused on blaming Obama for things and more focused on what are the decisions we need to make in Syria. I would hope that the president right now is asking him, what are my options in Syria? What are the diplomatic options? What are the military options if necessary? What is the legal basis to use force if that's necessary? What argument do we need to make with the Russians? After all, the Syrians are their client. They brokered a deal to get rid of chemical weapons. Assad clearly didn't comply with it. So I'm hoping that the removal of Bannon and some consolidation of authority in McMaster will result in a more sound policy.
And do you want to respond to Trey Gowdy, who we bumped in with him talking about you being less than forthcoming with documents at times?
Well, you know, the irony of that is during Benghazi, I was urging that we allow the White House and the State Department to automate searches so that we could use whatever terms Mr. Gowdy wanted and get documents produced more quickly. They didn't want to do that. I think they wanted the fight with the White House and the State Department. And I think Mr. Gowdy's chief objection is, I don't want the Intelligence Committee investigation to be run like the Benghazi Committee was. That was a political instrument. That would be the worst thing possible for this investigation to become.
Congressman, it's Richard Haass here. Given what's going on with your committee, do you think in some ways it can reclaim its legitimacy here and the perception that it can carry out an investigation? Or do you essentially think that it's been taken out of the game and it's really up to the Senate or to some other mechanism?
You know, it certainly hasn't been taken out of the game, and we're fully one half of the resources that are devoted to the Russia investigation, so there's no way that we can walk away from our responsibility. There was certainly a cloud over it on the basis of the chairman's evening rendezvous with the White House and the way the White House tried to effectively use the committee to launder information. That cloud will persist. The Speaker has said, nonetheless, this chairman will continue to run the investigation, and we will just have to deal with that fact unless there's a decision by the Republican leadership to establish a fully independent commission. Nonetheless, we are now in the process of agreeing on our initial witness list. I think we made a lot of progress on that. We'll be scheduling people to come in before the committee. We continue to review documents, and we continue to press the White House to share these documents that now only the chairman and I have seen at the White House, apart from our staff, with the full committee. The president did make it clear to me when I met with him he had no objection to people having access to these documents. It is apparently his staff that are objecting. And you would think if these documents were so insinuating as they would like to suggest, that they would want the full committee members to review them. So let's put them to the test. Let's see if they will back up the president's words on this.
Congressman, obviously the president has heard your concerns and has heard your version of the story and how it unfolded following your meeting with him, where he said that he would present you with the documents. You have yet to be presented with the documents. It's been a few days now since your meeting. Given all of that, is this a president that you trust?
Well, and again, I don't think it's just my version. The White House staff hasn't quarreled with what the president said. They simply don't agree with his recommendation, apparently. In terms of trusting the president, you know, look, I have a very important investigation to try to help run. And that requires me simply to follow the evidence where it leads. It doesn't require me to have trust or a lack of trust in the president. I can tell you that I find it enormously distressing that the commander-in-chief will level accusations against President Obama of committing a crime and now Susan Rice of committing a crime without putting forward any evidence. But, equally troubling is the fact that in the meeting, for example, with one of our strongest allies, Angela Merkel, he would do things so deliberately insulting as to reportedly hand her a bill for amounts due, like she's a debtor or a deadbeat of some kind. That's the kind of thing you do if you want to directly sabotage an important relationship. I don't see why that would benefit the United States in any way, shape, or form. So it's not just about trust, but it is about whether these actions are damaging our national security.
Joe.
Well, yeah, Congressman, obviously we agree with you on most of what you've said this morning, if you ever watch any of the show. But we've also, when we've been talking to David Ignatius and other people about the intel community and the investigation, we've sort of adopted this 95-5 rule. If Russia and Trump collusion, that investigation's 95% of the story, then perhaps improper masking and improper leaking is at least 5% of the story. We were very critical of Trey Gowdy when other Republicans, when they tried to make that first hearing all about leaks. But do you agree that Americans do have a right to know the truth about the possible Trump-Russia collusion, as well as whether the names of Trump administration officials were improperly unmasked and then leaked? Can Congress and the press do two things at once while keeping proper perspective on what the bigger story is?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and we really need to. There have been, as you know, Joe, because you probably have raised this in the past as well, concerns, legitimate concerns among civil libertarians about a whole range of surveillance practices and procedures, including whether minimization is being done correctly or whether there's, backdoor surveillance going on where you're surveilling foreign parties with a real intent of figuring out who they're talking to back in the United States. Those are things that we constantly oversee on the Intelligence Committee. It's a very important part of our responsibility. We want to make sure our intelligence agencies are getting the information they need to protect the country, but are also protecting our civil liberties and our privacy. So, yes, we absolutely should. And in fact, that's what we were doing. The chairman said that he was concerned about that. I said, great, let's request all the information the agencies have, and we did. Where we got off track was when the White House tried to spoon-feed the committee surreptitiously a subset of that information. But you're absolutely right. That issue and the leak issue are things that the committee should look at in the regular course of business.
Yeah. So this is one of the things that's concerned me really quickly, and I'm glad to hear this from you, because it seems to be a zero-sum game for some people in politics and also in the media, that you must either investigate Russia and Trump and possible collusion there, or you must investigate Susan Rice and possible improper unmasking and improper leaking. And of course, I'm not putting that on Susan Rice. I'm hoping, though, that you all will aggressively investigate both, because as Republicans, some good Republicans have rightly said, what Russia did to Democrats in 2016, they could do to Republicans in 2020. The same is true about unmasking and leaking, if that actually occurred, right?
No, that's absolutely true. And indeed, when the chairman and I hammered out weeks ago what the scope of our investigation would be, it was very important to the GOP members that we look at leaks. Democrats are concerned about that, too. It's been a omnipresent problem for administrations of both parties. So we did include that within the scope of our investigation. That was part of our mutual agreement. That is something we can look at. I do, think it is an effort at misdirection for the president, though, to say, don't look at the Russia stuff. That's a fake story. These are the only issues that matter. And I take strong issue with that.
We take strong issue with that, too. And also, Meek, it's extraordinarily important to underline at this point, too, that no matter what comes out about unmasking, no matter what comes out about leaking, Donald Trump's tweet about Barack Obama wiretapping Trump Towers was a lie, is a lie, will always be a lie.
from the President of the United States. Congressman
true.
Adam Schiff, thank you very much. And
Thank
still
you.
ahead.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.